There's a moment before every orchestra begins. It's always fascinated me because it's wild. The musicians take the stage and they begin individually warming up their instruments. A violinist runs through a passage, a trumpet plays a scale, the percussionist tests the timpani, a French horn is sounding from somewhere in the back. Tracy calls it's oral chaos, which is true. Nothing fits together. Everyone seems to be playing something different. If you didn't know what was happening, you might think something has already gone terribly wrong. But then the concert master stands. The oboe plays a single note, and the entire orchestra tunes itself to that note. Then comes the beautiful moment. Silence. The instruments are ready. The room grows still, and the conductor walks on the stage. The baton rises, and all of those instruments a moment ago, which sounded so different, they begin to make music together. The violinist doesn't become a trumpet. The flute doesn't try to sound like the cello. The percussion doesn't apologize for being a percussion. The instruments remain fully themselves, but now each of them are attuned. They're listening. Each are responding in kind. Each is offering its own sound to something larger than itself, and together they become something that none of them could have achieved on their own. Harmony. I think Paul would have loved orchestras because that is as remarkably close to what he uses to describe the church in 1 Corinthians 12. He could have chosen any metaphor. There's a bunch that would have worked. He could have used a family tree, a vineyard, a flock, a building. But instead, he chose a human body. Because bodies, like orchestras, they teach the same lesson. Unity does not require sameness. In fact, difference is what makes harmony possible. And when you hear this passage from 1 Corinthians 12, we usually assume that what Paul is talking about is spiritual gifts. That is not untrue. It's just a subtext. Listen carefully to what he said when he's talking about the foot. It doesn't say, because I'm not a hand, I don't have a purpose. It says, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong. Now that's a different problem. This passage isn't ultimately about you've got gifts, I've got gifts, which gifts are better, who needs to use their gifts. It's not about that, but it's deeper. A bigger thing is about belonging. Paul names two lies in this text that keep people from feeling like they truly belong, that they just don't experience it when they're in a church together. The first lie is the lie of comparison. The foot says, because I'm not a hand, I don't belong. The ear says, because I'm not an eyeball, I don't belong. But notice what has happened. The foot isn't broken. We're not given that detail. The ear hasn't been rejected. It's right there. But no one has asked either the foot or the ear to leave. They just start comparing themselves to what they think is more important to the body. Somewhere along the way, the foot looked at the hand and decided that someone else's gift has become the true measure of worth. Isn't that what comparison does? We compare all the time. As a matter of fact, I think these two lies that Paul addresses are still resonant here, even 2,000 years later. We compare our marriages. We get on Instagram and we compare what our parenting strategies are. We compare our careers with one another, our faith, our successes, even our church involvement. We look around and we quietly wonder, why can't I be more like what I see in them? Or why does everyone else in this room seem to have it figured out and I'm still trying to figure out mine? Comparison has a way of making every room feel like it's someone else's room. And Paul says that's a lie, because belonging has never depended on you changing to be something else to belong. It's never depended on sameness. If every instrument in an orchestra tried to become the first chair violin, then there wouldn't be the music that we get in an orchestra. If the whole body were an eye, as silly as that is, Paul says, where would the hearing be? Difference is never the problem. Comparison is. God has arranged the body, the church body, in a way that every member has a place. Your place within the body isn't something that you achieve either. It's something that you receive. But Paul isn't finished. Comparison is the first lie. But it doesn't only convince us that we are less than others. Sometimes comparison convinces us that we're better than others. And that gives rise to the second lie, the lie of pride. Look at verse 21. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need for you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. Do you notice the difference? The first lie says, because I don't look or act like you, then I don't belong. The second lie is the opposite. Because you're not like me, we don't really need you. At first, these sound like opposite problems. One of them grows out of insecurity, the lie of comparison. The other grows out of a sense of pride. But C.S. Lewis argues in Mere Christianity that the two of these are deeply connected. We aren't proud because we're intelligent, successful, or gifted or good-looking. Pride emerges when we believe, and we begin to believe, that we are more intelligent, more successful, more gifted, and better looking than someone else. It's the comparison that makes us proud. And suddenly, Paul's two lies, they aren't so different after all. The foot compares itself to the hand and says, I am less than you, so I don't really have a place. The eye compares itself to the hand and says, I am greater than you, so we don't really need to give you much attention at all. Comparison can make us feel inferior to one another. Pride can make us feel superior to one another. Either way, they both keep us from feeling like we belong to the body. And Paul says the moment one part of the body decides it doesn't need the other, well, then it stops acting like a church. Your heart has never looked at your lungs and said, you can take it easy, I got this. Every part quietly works together to give life to the whole. That's what healthy churches do. It's what healthy bodies do. And Paul says that he'll even take this a little bit further. He says the members that seem weaker are indispensable. The members who are treated as less honorable, we're going to give them more honor. That detail is important because the church does not simply make room for people while leaving the old hierarchies intact. The body of Christ rearranges honor. It moves towards the people that society overlooks. It listens to the voices that the world ignores. It gives particular care to those who have been treated as though their lives don't matter. Because belonging isn't merely being allowed in the room. Belonging is knowing that your presence changes the room. In the body of Christ, no one is merely tolerated. No one is seen as ornamental to God. No one is expendable to God. The members the world calls weak, Paul calls indispensable. Now, we often imagine spiritual maturity means becoming more independent. I mean, that's what it's like when kids go through adolescence, then young adults, and they grow up and move into adulthood. They become more independent. They rely on fewer people. They become more self-sufficient, financially responsible. And it's easy for us to make that assumption that that's also true for faith development. But Paul says the church is the exact opposite. Spiritual maturity is discovering just how deeply our lives belong to one another. Because here's a truth that we will spend most of our lives resisting. You cannot become your true self alone. The teacher who believed in you played a role. The coach who encouraged you, the friend who stayed, the parent who loved you, the spouse who forgave you, the church that prayed for you. You did not arrive at where you are on your own. They all played a role. We are all, in ways that we barely recognize, the gifts we have received from one another. And that's what Paul says in verse 26. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. Your life is no longer only your life. My life is caught up into yours. Yours is caught up into mine. That's what it means to be a church body. So go with me back to the concert hall. Remember what happened before the music began. At first, there's chaos. Everyone's playing their own thing. Everyone's warming up on their own time. Everyone's hearing mostly themselves. And that's how most people live their life, just focusing on what they've got to get done and how they need to prepare for that moment. But then the orchestra begins to listen. They're tuned and they grow quiet, and the conductor walks onto the stage. I think that's a beautiful picture of the church. Sometimes all we hear is all the things that we've got going on, just our part, our own struggles, our own gifts, our own opinions, our own failings and hurts. And from where we're sitting, it can feel a little disjointed. From where we're sitting, the church can feel a little noisy. From where we're sitting, the church can feel a little bit unfinished. But the conductor holds the whole score. The violinist can't hear everything from where they're sitting, neither can the cellist. But the conductor knows where every note belongs. Christ is the conductor. And I think that's how Christ sees the church. Christ hears something that we can't hear. Christ knows the whole symphony. Christ sees a body where every member matters, a community where every story has a place, a people becoming something together that none of us could have ever become alone. Perhaps that's why Paul doesn't say, you should become the body of Christ. He just says it. You are the body of Christ. Not someday, you are right now. Not because you've achieved it, but because Christ has already called you into it. So I don't know which of these two lies that Paul addresses that are more tempting for you to believe. Maybe you really believe because I don't look like them or I'm not like them that I don't belong to this body. Or maybe you're the person that's like, you aren't like me, so we don't really need you. Either way, Paul offers us a better truth to both of us. You cannot become yourself alone. God has arranged this body with extraordinary care, which means the people around you, they're not interruptions to your spiritual life. They are your spiritual life. The people who sing beside you, the people who pray for you, the people who challenge you, the people who carry you when you can no longer carry yourself, even the people whose notes sound very different than yours. This is how Christ makes us whole. Not by making us the same, but by teaching us that we belong to one another. And maybe that's the miracle of a healthy church. Under the direction of Christ, our many lives become one song. Not because every instrument plays the same note, not because every instrument offers but because every instrument offers its own note to something far more beautiful than itself. So bring your note. Listen for the others. Keep your eye on the conductor. And together, we'll become the music that Christ intended to play to the whole world.